Hello, this is the design and study video for the research methods section. Just if I can remind you to write up your Cornell notes while you're watching this video. Any questions that I ask, please note down at the bottom, finish your mind map at the end, and if you can just read ahead in some of the textbooks, that'd be great. Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk to you about the design and study question. It's not technically an individual section within the specification for AQA research methods, but it's certainly a question that has appeared in each of the free specimen papers, meaning it's very, very likely, almost certain to turn up in your research methods paper. Also, it's an extended question, so it's worth quite a lot of marks, maybe 9, maybe 12 marks altogether. So don't be intimidated by this because it's a long mark question. It might be more helpful to think about these as maybe 4 shorter questions. And even if you're not fully comfortable in answering the whole thing, certainly trying to answer what you can and making an attempt at all of it would put you in the best running to get a number of marks from this. So the point of this question is to bring together a bunch of sections of research methods together in one question, let it all hang off each other. That being said, when you get this question, it says design a study. Don't just write anything. Don't just think, oh, well, I'm just going to plunge ahead and just start designing the study. They need to know very particular bits of information from you. And those particular bits of information they'll give to you in bullet points. So what you need to do is take a moment, read the bullet points, and then think, right, I'm going to write 3 or 4 paragraphs depending on the number of bullet points. You will be blocked from the higher mark band if you're missing one of the bullet points. If you're missing 2 of the bullet points, you'll get knocked down. You'll be blocked from the top 2 mark bands. So even if you're a little unsure, make sure you do the number of bullet points, paragraph for each bullet point, and really focus on what you can answer, but make an attempt on even what you're a little bit unsure about, and that might still push you over into the next mark band. Okay. So once you've decided what you're going to write for each bullet point, focus on each bullet point in turn and maybe treat it like maybe 4 separate 4-mark responses. Now, these are going to be applied questions. So of course you need to know the research methods, but it's not a matter of just simply stating the research methods. It has to be applied in each case. So it does require some imagination. So really do be brave about thinking, well, in this situation, how could it apply? So don't just be tempted just to write the research methods. Have an attempt to go, in this case, this is how it might work. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I've looked through all 3 of the specimen papers and I've tried to identify each of the bullet points and what they've been asking you to do on each one. We don't know which bullet points you're going to get. You might get bullet points that aren't on this list, or you might get some of these. These seem to be the most likely, so we'll talk through them. So if it asks you to identify some methodological issues, so this is problems with the way the experiment is conducted. So perhaps it is repeated measures and you've got a problem with order effects. So you might suggest how you might counterbalance. Maybe there's some investigator effects, and if you want to control this, you do a double blind. If you're wondering about this issue, you can watch the control video for more information. Okay, ethical issues. So if you might just say ethical issues, and then you need to identify potential ethical issues, and then suggest some fixes that would apply in that situation. The design. So maybe it suggests that it asks that you suggest a design and the reason why. So if the most logical course of action would be repeated measures, state that and say why under that situation. If you feel a matched pairs is more appropriate, state that and suggest why. Materials and apparatus. Sometimes that seems a little bit scary because you might be thinking, apparatus, you know, we're not necessarily looking at like EEG machines or something really impressive. A questionnaire is a material. A rating scale of 0 to 7 is materials. Perhaps a stopwatch or a data collection table. Really basic stuff that you need in order to carry out whichever the experiment is or the observation. Participant variables. So you might find that maybe the sample, if not carefully done, could be unbalanced. So how might you address that? Might you use a particular sampling method? Might you, once you've got your sample, use random allocation, or maybe even then suggest a matched pairs design in order to deal with participant variables? The tasks chosen. It might ask you to suggest what they might be asked to do. So they're not going to be, this isn't a trick question. Just say something that could be applied in this scenario, and make sure in some way you're referring to how you would make the task fair for all participants. So in one of the questions, it suggests a presentation, and all it is to ask you what the topic would be on it in the mark scheme. So just have a little bit of imagination if you get asked about the task chosen. The environment can affect the results gained. So maybe you need to be careful of temperature or the noise levels in the room. Behavioral categories. So behavioral categories is simply a way of picking behaviors that can be measured. So what the examiner will be looking for here is to make sure that, yeah, you could count 1, 2, 3, these things. Shyness or aggression isn't operationalized. Folding the arms, that could be. Hitting someone, these things could be counted, but more general things couldn't. So if it asks for behavioral categories, suggest 3 or 4 different behavioral categories that you could count and measure, and maybe you'd suggest how you'd record them, maybe in a frequency table. Okay, reliability and validity. So it would be suggestions on how you establish that the study has been reliable or the study has been valid, and then maybe give suggestions. So for example, if you are asking for, if you're given suggestions about how to improve reliability, you might look at inter-rater reliability, where you have 2 observers and then you compare notes. Or if you're doing a questionnaire and you're looking at reliability, the split half method, where you have a questionnaire and you want to check to see if the questionnaire is reliable. You get half of the questionnaire to be completed by someone, the other half to be completed separately, and then you check that both sides of the questionnaire produce the same results. Stats. Now stats will probably be the hardest section to answer, but don't be nervous when you see this. This is effectively one of the stats tests that we prepared for, and if you still feel a little bit shaky about this, go and watch the inferential statistics video again. If it's descriptive statistics, then we're talking about the measure of central tendency, so just mean, median, mode, and which are the most appropriate. Dispersion, you're looking at the range of the standard deviation. But if we're talking about inferential stats, they're going to want you to choose the correct inferential stat. So that's going to be based on the level of data. It's also going to be based on whether it's looking for a correlation or a difference, and it's also going to be looking at whether it's repeated measures or independent groups. So from that information you should be able to gain from the question, you'll need to suggest a statistical test that would be used. Okay, so it could be one of those. Most likely would include at least some of those, but they could throw a curveball and add some other areas from research methods as a whole. But make sure you're prepared to answer some of those questions. But don't be afraid to use your knowledge and in some way creatively apply your answer. Make sure you write the number of paragraphs as there are bullet points. Make sure you give each paragraph an attempt at answering the question, and then that should mean that you are eligible to reach the top mark band in there. Don't be intimidated by it being a large question. Think of it as perhaps 3 or 4 smaller questions that you certainly can answer. And if you want to be sure that you're applying, you might want to say, in this case, they would use this. In this case, in this situation, these people would do this. Okay, best of luck with that question.